Book 1 Hydaelyn Basic Aetherology. Not only is ether the most basic building block of all creation, but also the life energy upon which the various schools of magic draw. Without knowledge of ether and how it works, scholars would understand significantly less about the world and its inner workings. Life and ether. Within all beings, whether it be man, animal, or even plant, does ether flow. It is the spark which grants life to the lifeless. Conversely, death can be said to occur once ether has left a corporeal object. From this, it is clear to see why many scholars use the words life and ether interchangeably. It can be assumed that a young man of sound mind and body will possess a high concentration of ethereal energy in his humors, whereas an older man or one inflicted with corruption will not. Some scholars have expanded upon this hypothesis, saying that the consumption of food serves not only to fill the belly, but to provide the body with ether lost through exertion. Ether is not by any means static. It constantly flows through creation, forming currents through earth, water, and air, which ensure that life is sustained throughout the world. The stoppage of these currents would be akin to the atrophication of a limb cut off from the heart. Ether is the lifeblood of Hydaelyn, and without it she and her children would perish. The source of all magics. Manipulation of ether in a manner that deviates from its natural tendencies is what scholars call magic. While the various schools of magic, such as thaumaturgy and conjury, all employ differing methods to achieve this goal, the basic concept is the same. A similar, yet more primitive type of ethereal manipulation can also be seen in non-sentient beings. A raptor breathing fire, or a biast generating a levin-like shock, are all examples of lesser-born creatures utilizing the ether within their bodies, or available from the nearby environment, to hunt or protect themselves from harm. There exist some objects which are believed to toe the line between organic and inorganic, gems being one example. Arcanists tip the scales in favor of life by drawing ether into the stones, the result being creatures known as carbuncles. The 6 elements. Ethereal energies can be divided into 6 distinctive elements: fire, wind, lightning, water, ice, and earth. These elements provide nature with aspects that govern how they act in the world. For example, a region where ethereal currents are aspected towards fire will generally be hotter and drier than a region featuring primarily ice-aspected currents, a region likely to be characterized by frigid climes. The same can be said for the flora and fauna that populate an area. Seedkin aspected towards wind can navigate the skies as if they were winged cloudkin. Scalekin aspected towards earth will exhibit lithified skin, protecting them from sharp-fanged predators. In addition to the 6 elements, there also exist 2 poles, astral and umbral, which greatly influence the nature of the elements. An astral charge bringing more activity, while an umbral charge results in more passiveness. For example, when in an astral state, fire exhibits high volatility, whereas its umbral state is characterized by dryness. Inter-elemental relationships. Scholars have long known about the relationships of the elements, these characteristics documented in the ancient tome Essences and Permutations, a treatise of the 6 elements. The following is an excerpt from Essences and Permutations, a treatise of the 6 elements. The 6 nativities and myriad creation. The spark of lightning ignites when it strikes, and thus fire is born. The heat of fire renders to ash all that it touches, and thus earth is born. The density of earth shuns sun and harbors cold, and thus ice is born. The armor of ice melts away, and thus water is born. The moistness of water mists and rises, and thus wind is born. The gusts and sighs of wind gather the clouds, and thus lightning is born. The three conquests, boundless and unwavering. Earth grounds lightning. Water erodes earth. Lightning boils water. The three submissions, timeless and unending. Fire is extinguished by wind. Ice is melted by fire. Wind is obstructed by ice. Dynamic opposites and the bifurcation of polarity. The six elements are manifest in all things great and small, and their polarity deriveth from the astral heavens above and the umbral depths below. That was an excerpt from Essences and Permutations, a treatise of the six elements. Crystals. When a living entity dies, the ether remaining will normally leave the body and return to the world's ethereal currents, also known as the life stream. When a living entity, however, experiences death-inducing trauma, such as a mortal wound in battle, the resulting sudden release of its most heavily aspected life energy will oftentimes manifest corporeally before it can return to the life stream, a phenomenon we know as crystals. This can also occur when a wound is dealt to the very land itself, and is a reason why crystal deposits are found throughout the land. The elemental aspect of the energy trapped in these crystals can be harnessed and used in a myriad of manners. Applying fire crystals to a forge can increase its internal temperature, assisting in the smelting of ore. The cooling properties of an ice crystal can assist a grocer in maintaining the freshness of meat or produce. That said, due to the extreme concentration of aspected ether within a crystal, direct consumption of a crystal by a living being can severely alter the ethereal balance within its body, ultimately resulting in severe injury or even death. The Twin Realms. Aetherologists believe that existence occurs on two separate but overlapping planes. The corporeal realm, or realm consisting of objects with basic physical properties, and the ethereal realm, more namely a realm without substance, but containing the essence of all creation. When an item in the corporeal realm dies or is destroyed, its ether passes back into the ever-flowing currents of the ethereal realm, sometimes referred to by the lay term the life stream. When something new is born in the corporeal realm, it is granted life with the energy from the life stream. Thus, a natural balance is maintained between the two worlds. Each plane exerts influence on the other, the proximity of the two determining the scope of that influence. In places of close proximity, the ethereal plane exerts a great amount of influence on the corporeal plane, and vice versa. The corporeal plane benefits from this proximity by becoming rich in ambient ether, something that promotes life and growth. Conversely, locations where there is distance between the corporeal and ethereal planes are thought to suffer from harsh climes and be characteristically void of life. If, for some reason, one plane were to become irreparably damaged, the other would also suffer, leading to the eventual collapse of both. Ethereal travel. As stated, when the planes draw close in proximity, they equally exert influence over each other. We have already given an example of how the corporeal plane benefits from this influence, but what of the ethereal plane? One manner of measurable influence is how corporeal will can be maintained while in a state of pure ether. This ultimately allows for the travel of corporeal beings through the ethereal plane without the loss of ties to the being's own plane. In simpler terms, it renders possible the phenomenon commonly known as teleportation. Magics are wielded to reduce a body and will to its ethereal components and cross over into the ethereal plane. While there, the will of the host is maintained, allowing him to travel almost instantaneously to other locations in the plane, where he then crosses back, regaining his corporeal form. To accomplish this, however, the host requires special beacons that point the subject where he needs to be. Etherites, massive concentrations of crystallized ether, serve as the beacons, most often appearing in areas where the corporeal and ethereal planes are the closest. These areas are already teeming with life because of this proximity, which is why centers of population can be found near etherites. Without these beacons, an ethereal will would merely drift in the life stream for eternity, slowly breaking down into the most basic form of pure ether until Hydaelyn gave those particles new form. Historically, settlements have been established around existing deposits of etherite, areas teeming with life due to their proximity to the ethereal plane. However, the Sharlayans, despite a lack of comprehension regarding the process involved, have succeeded in applying technology from previous ages to the construction of portable etherites, which can be placed in almost any location. Hydaelyn. Some scholars in the field of Aetherology further believe that somewhere deep beneath the land slumbers a mass concentration of ethereal life energy. These aetherologists refer to this phenomenon as the mother crystal. Still, some take this hypothesis one step further, stating that the existence of a mother crystal proves that the planet is alive and represents a heretofore unclassified biological entity. To support this theory, they point to the oracles and heroes of ancient history who claim unexplainable visions of the future or unnatural strength to overcome impossible odds. The scholars believe that it is through these visions that the planet is conveying messages to those she entreats to aid her, with the reoccurring themes of Hydaelyn's will or the will of light, which appear in the myths and folklore of seemingly unrelated civilizations as proof of this belief. The Ethereal Sea. A focal point of Sharlayan academia has forever been to understand and predict Hydaelyn's fate. One intriguing fact that their scholars have uncovered is that the deeper into the planet's core one ventures, the more blurred the border between the corporeal and ethereal realm becomes, leading aetherologists to believe that if one were able to travel deep enough, they may be able to witness and examine the ethereal realm while maintaining their corporeal form. An attempt by the Sharlayans to test this hypothesis was put into motion with the construction of the Anti-Tower near the Sharlayan city-state in the Dravanian hinterlands. Built deep beneath the surface of Hydaelyn, the tower focused ether into powerful magics which pried open a window to the ethereal realm, giving mankind its first ever view into the pleroma and beyond. Direct contact with the Mother Crystal was the next step in Sharlayan's research before the scholars were forced to flee Eorzea following the Garlean Empire's invasion of the realm. Primals. Arcanists have devised methods of tapping into their own ethereal energy to create semi-sentient yet fully loyal familiars. This, however, is not the sole method available for drawing forth an animate being from the ether. A second method, involving the combining of corporeal ethereal energy, usually amassed in crystallized form, with spiritual ethereal energy, usually represented in the form of faith, prayer, or willpower, in an elaborate summoning ceremony has, in recent years, grown increasingly common amongst the beast tribes of Eorzea. Using this method, powerful godlike beings known as primals can be brought to manifest, allowing them the opportunity to enforce their will on the land. The name Primal is derived from the beast tribe's belief that these creatures are deities from which their peoples originate. In addition to Primal, The beings have historically also been known as icons by both the Allegan and Garlean empires, who were adamant in their dismissal of the creature's deific status. Once a primal has gained a corporeal form, the creature will oft, as a boon, offer protection to or empower those who summoned it. With corporeal manifestation complete, a primal can also project its own internal ether upon other weak-minded beings, corrupting their hearts and minds, effectively creating obedient followers. This tempering can prove a primal's greatest weapon, meaning even a victory against one of the creatures will not be had without great sacrifice. And even these victories are short-lived, as once enough crystals are gathered and another ceremony performed, the demigod can be resummoned as if it were never defeated. Finally, in addition to the chaos wrought by the beings themselves, the very act of summoning can have adverse effects on the land. The ether required in the summoning and maintaining of the creature's corporeal form will, without fail, draw overmuch from the surrounding environment's life energy, turning once lush areas into wastelands and disrupting the very balance of the world itself. Tempering. Those tempered by a primal eventually lose nearly the entirety of their wills, leaving only shells that bend to the whims of the beast who hollowed them. Men in this state will give their own lives as easily as they would their names, if it is but the wish of their new master. Not only do these mindless followers provide a formidable army, but also provide the faith needed to re-summon the primal, should the being ever lose its corporeal form. Countless attempts, both magical and scientific, have been made to restore a tempered mind to its original state. However, all have ended in failure. The only known cure for this manner of ethereal brainwashing being death. While even a single exposure to a primal's ether can tear apart a victim's mind, multiple exposures can lead to an eventual degradation and transformation of his body. Leviathan's drowned followers have been reported to exhibit physical features more commonly associated with wavekin, while Ramu's touched sylphs will grow extended beards. Proof of this final claim is, at the current moment, severely lacking. In the years leading up to, as well as those directly following the calamity, a great number of primals were repeatedly summoned by the Eorzean beast tribes in desperation to protect their peoples from the Garlean Empire. Some believe that this, coupled with the general resurgence of beast tribe activity, are why the realm still remains in a state of disarray. Next chapter, Geography.